Well, welcome to Your County on Community 7 Television. I'm Schutz Wies and I'm your host. Each month we look at what's going on in Yellowstone County, and this month we're very happy to have Sheriff Mike Linder with us. Mike's been the sheriff here for a very long time, so Sheriff Linder, thank you so much for coming on the program.
You bet. Thank you for having me.
All right. So we're going to talk about what's been going on with the Sheriff's Department, and we'll probably delve a little bit more into the jail than
Sure.
anything else. But before we do that, give us some background. Did you grow up in the area? How did you come to be living in Yellowstone County?
Well, I'm actually born and raised in Montana. I've been here and worked here all my life. Grew up as a kid in Great Falls, went to school in Great Falls, and after school went to work in the family business and traveled around a little bit between Missoula, Bozeman, and Helena, just keeping the operations going, and ended up here in Billings to take over a business that my dad had here. And had the opportunity, because I had an interest into getting into law enforcement. Started out in the reserve program in 1984, and in 1989 I went full-time at the sheriff's office investigating illegal drugs in the community, and did a little bit of undercover work and some investigations, and that's where I spent for a few years until going into the patrol division.
So then give us some kind of progression of your career through the Sheriff's Department. What kind of some of the different roles that you had once you were, hey, I'm a full patrolman. I work. This is my job. This is my day job.
Well, I went into the patrol division and I just worked the streets around the community. In the sheriff's office, we work out in the county. We have a lot of other issues that we deal with, such as serving civil papers and serving warrants and that type of stuff. But after a couple of years, I went to work as a resident deputy, we call them, out in the eastern part of the county. Worked out in the Warden area, Shepherd, Huntley, out to Custer, out in that area was my regular assignment. A few years later, I got promoted to sergeant, so I took over the afternoon shift for a few years, up through the ranks to lieutenant, and then to where I am now. I've been a part of a lot of different programs that we've had at the office. Spent 13, 14 years on the SWAT team. I've been on the river rescue team since I started the reserve program. Still am one of the primary boat operators on the river boat or rescue boat, and firearms instructor. I've just done a lot of the different things.
Sure.
Assigned to the U.S. Marshals for 4 years, Violent Offender Task Force, and before I ran, and this is where I ended up.
All right. And that gives us a pretty good flavor
Sure.
of what the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Department does. Tell us what else Yellowstone County Sheriff's Department does.
Well, as I stated, we have a lot of different, I guess, divisions that we deal with. We have our civil division, like we serve civil papers, do a lot of that. The patrol division does pretty much what police department and other law enforcement agencies do: go out and patrol, respond to calls for service, do proactive policing, such as checking businesses, checking schools, that type of stuff. And then probably the most important, as far as, or I guess the most active, would be our jail. The sheriff's office is responsible for the county jail unless the county commissioners hire a civilian to run the jail, and that's by statute. So the sheriff's office is pretty much responsible for that. But we do. The sheriff's office is responsible by statute for search and rescue. So anything that comes along that might be, lost hunters or river rescues, stuff like that, that's pretty much our job.
So do you have a search and rescue department within there, or do you work with another group that does search and rescue?
We actually have our own internal search and rescue. We have what we call special services officers. And again, they're similar to reserve deputies. They don't have to go through the training, but they have special skills that we're able to draw from. And in fact, yesterday, we were out doing some training out in the Four Dances recreation area, simulating a missing person that we had to go out and locate and bring back to safety. But it's a small group. They pretty much specialize in being able to go out and do searches, be available on for call out, and that type. And we're working. It's a fairly new program, but we're working to develop it into something, I guess, a little bit larger than what it is right now, and have more people available to be able to respond to a call.
Sure. Give us a sense for how you work with maybe some of the other sheriff's offices in counties around Yellowstone County. You know, given that Yellowstone's such a big county,
Right.
I'm assuming that you probably have a lot more resources, a lot more people, a lot more skills within your department than maybe a Golden Valley County, or, you know, some of those smaller counties. They probably just don't have the resources that you do. How do you work with those counties?
Well, we work through a program called mutual aid, and if we get a request, say from another sheriff or one of their responsible people, they can call us and ask for help. If we have people available, we'll send it to them. If we have to call people, then we'll do the same thing. We've done everything from sending our tactical team to assist with barricaded subjects. Here in the last couple of years, you might remember we went down to Hardin to they had a situation in their jail down there, and we went down there with not only with our patrol deputies, but we took our CERT team, our special enforcement team, from the jail down there to help resolve that issue. More recently, Muscle Shell County requested assistance, and not just our agency, but Sheriff's Office from across the state sent resources to help with traffic control, help out with evacuations and that type of stuff. So all of the agencies around here work together very well. We have a good working relationship with the surrounding counties and clear across the state. So
sure. All right. Let's dive into the COVID pandemic. We've all been dealing with it in different ways. How has it impacted Yellowstone County Sheriff's Department?
Well, you know, we've kind of learned to live with it, but in the beginning it was a little touch and go. You know, we had a lot of issues, especially down at the jail, because you know, people down there, they can't social distance. We had to make sure that we provided materials for cleaning, make sure that they had masks available, which they do, gloves, any type of thing that. We even bought new equipment for sanitizing, and the inmates themselves run a lot of it. So we have inmates that are assigned for these details. In our office at the sheriff's office, you know, we provided the equipment that they needed, any kind of supplies that they needed. And everybody just kind of took it to heart. You know, if they felt that they should be masked up, they masked up. If they felt that they were okay where they were at, there's a lot of times there's not people in there in the office, and it might be one or two people. So, you know, they can pretty much judge that for themselves.
Were you guys able to have, you know, on the majority of what you guys do, this is not a possibility, but were there aspects where you were able to have folks work from home and still be able to support parts of the sheriff's department that way? Somewhat.
We had a few people that have positions that they could do that. Eventually they came back to work. You know, in the beginning it was again, you know, people not knowing, just wanted to be real cautious, and so a few of them did work from home. They had computers that they could do their work, but so much of it has to be done through a national database that, you know, criminal justice information stuff. So it's really tough to do some of that stuff from home when the equipment is set up at the office. And then plus we have to have the ability to interact with people at the front counter. We never did shut anything down. We continued to do everything from, you know, processing civil papers to doing concealed weapons permits, which we do many of them every day. And so we have volunteers that were coming in, again, if they felt like they needed to be out for a while or just weren't sure, you know, they were able to make that call themselves, and we made it work. You know, I think that we did a very good job in staying up with things.
You know, anything in particular your patrol officers had to deal with? Because I'm sure they're coming up on a lot of situations where they just don't know exactly what's going on. So, you know, kind of any procedures they had to kind of, you know, I need to add this to my routine.
Yeah, and that was again in the beginning. The big concern was finding supplies. We did a very good job, I think, with our staff trying to locate, especially the masks and that type of stuff. Masks, gloves, any kind of sanitation products. You know, we made sure that everybody had the hand cleaner, hand sanitizer in their cars. Anything that they needed, if we could get it, we would get it for them. The county, in fact, as a whole, did a very good job with that. So if there was anything that we couldn't get, maybe the jail had it because they had to have a lot of gloves, for instance. And those types of things. So they did a good job. We've had some employees that have come down with the COVID and had to stay home. Some have quarantined. I'm not aware of anybody that had a real bad reaction to it, but we did. We were able to get the testing done. We had medical staff down at the jail that was able to do testing, get the results back, and in a fairly timely manner. And for the most part, everybody, again, kind of learned to live with it. So.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Yellowstone County Detention Center.
Yeah.
Tell us, kind of, what are the jurisdictions that are served by the Yellowstone County Detention Center? I know that you don't just have prisoners from Yellowstone County.
No.
Who else is down there?
Yellowstone County, we have ours. The Billings Police Department by far has the majority of the inmates in there that are pretrial, waiting to go on criminal charges that they have in the community. We hold for the feds, and usually the U.S. Marshal Service is the one that we work with there, because they handle the inmates for the federal agencies. A couple of the surrounding counties like Stillwater and Carbon County will take inmates for them. A lot of them they have to be a threat to the community because we just don't have the room right now, and some of them they'll take to other agencies. The State Department of Corrections, we are holding a lot of them right now. As you're aware, they have an issue with the pandemic hitting their facility very heavily, whether it be in the women's prison or the men's prison, so they're not transporting very many.
Sure.
We're having to house a lot of them, and again, this is something that we all have to work together with. But one of the things, we're very fortunate that we do have full-time medical staff at our jail, and that has really saved us a lot of problems. So.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about, we talked about all the different jurisdictions you serve, but, why is it up to Yellowstone County to have a jail and not, why? How does that happen? Why is it not the responsibility of the city of Billings to house all the prisoners that are there? Or why isn't it the responsibility of the state of Montana to house all the prisoners?
Right.
that are there? Why does it fall on your department to have to do this task?
Well, I ask myself that same question sometimes. But the chief and I have kind of a running joke that if that we would trade, that he could have the jail and I'd take the dog pound. This was many years ago and stuff, but he was too willing to do that, so I kind of had to back out of that.
You might have known what was coming there.
He might. But state law says that the sheriff, unless the commissioners contract with a private contractor, that the sheriff is responsible for the operating the jail. So. There have been city jails. I know the police department here at one time had a jail in their building, and they could hold inmates. But for the most part, it's just just something that counties have done for many, many years. So.
Just kind of a historical precedent that the counties is where it's going to go. And at this point, I know you guys have invested a lot of time and effort and money into having a jail. And I think for the most part, it kind of works in this situation. Is that how you feel about it too?
It really does. We've spent a lot of money here just in the last few years. We added on a 148-bed women's unit. We got a 286-bed men's unit. The women's unit isn't quite full, but the men's unit is considerably over full. And then keep in mind that we have two units, one in the women's pod and one in the men's pod that have to be kept open. We use them for quarantine and isolation. When we bring people into the jail, we put them at least for 72 hours into a quarantine unit, and if they answer the questions that they have any possible symptoms or anything, then they go into isolation so that we don't end up spreading it around. That takes up probably 40 beds in the men's unit and probably an additional 20-some beds in the women's unit that we can't use for housing those that might be picked up on the streets.
Sure.
So we have to kind of divide things up best we can to make sure that we can hold the people that really need to be in jail.
Yeah. We touched on this a little bit, but I want to go a little bit deeper.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a lot of work that's been done at the jail over the last handful of years.
Right.
Talk to us about where we started and what have we done along the way and what is maybe left to do.
Well, I'll give you an example. Just say 10 years ago, our jail was designed to hold 286 people. In 2012, we had the most bookings that we've ever put into a jail, or put people into the jail in 1 year, with over 10,000 bookings.
Wow.
So as time went on and as we started seeing the problem become more and more, we started programs. We started the labor detail, which was basically keeping people out of jail. They could go and work in a nonprofit, for example, maybe family services or something. And for each 8-hour day that they would work, they would get credit for 2 days in jail. So they would pay a fee to be a part of this program that keeps them out of jail. And we saw those booking numbers going down. Our 24/7 program we started within a week after it became law. And that allows us, especially those with the DUIs or those that can come in, they can test their breath in the morning, they do it in the evening, and as long as they are not testing positive, they don't go to jail. So over the past, let's say 5 years, we've seen those numbers come down dramatically, down to about 6,000 bookings in a year. But keep in mind the population hasn't changed. Even when we had a 286-bed jail, we were keeping as many as 500 people in that jail, so it was very difficult. Now that we've been able to spread them out because we have the women's unit in there, we're still overcrowded, but mostly in the men's side, not so much on the women's side. But again, employees too. Not everybody wants to work in a jail. It takes kind of a special person. We're very fortunate that we have the staff that we do down there to be able to keep a lid on things, keep things operating on a very even keel, and keep it safe.
Sure. Any building improvements that I know you guys have done a lot to it, but any more that you need to do, or you're kind of wrapping that up?
Well, we pretty much here in the last year and a half, we've pretty much done all of the plumbing underneath that building. We literally had to go in there, dig up the floors, and replace all the sewer lines in there. There's some cement work that still needs to be done. We're looking at possibly remodeling a recreation area in there and turning that into a quarantine area so that we can open up our men's unit, the pod that we're using there. But the big issue right now is probably going to be the roof. That roof is 30-some years old. It's been repaired many times, and we've been talking to the commissioners. They're aware of it. And so that's probably our main issue right now. But, figuring out how, what we're going to do with all the inmates that we have in our jail until we can get the some of the Department of Corrections and some of the federal inmates out of there, when they have a place to go. We have to work together on that. So
sure, absolutely. We touched on this a little bit earlier with the kind of the other side of your office, but what kind of procedures did you have to put in place down at the jail? You mentioned that earlier, that those folks don't necessarily have a choice of social distancing and stuff like that. So what kind of procedures did you have to put in place down there, not only for prisoners but also for staff?
Well, for both, if we bring them in, they would get their temperature taken. Obviously, looking for the fever. That became the big thing in the beginning there. So we were looking for fevers. We were doing questionnaires, looking for other possible symptoms by asking the inmates and the employees. And when they go into the jail, they have to pass that, or they go straight into quarantine. If we have inmates, or not inmates, employees that are ill or not feeling well, we tell them, don't come to work. Just stay home. If they meet them at the door and they don't pass the fever test, then they get turned around and they leave as well. So,
sure.
But it's become a little bit of a hardship simply because of the staffing down there. We're already short on staff, and then we have to send them home, holding people over, for extra hours, or to have calls other people in to work overtime shifts. Sure. So it's been tough on them, but as I said, they're troopers. They've been holding up very well and been doing a great job.
What are you guys kind of keeping tabs on as far as making sure, we've had some tests and whatever, but we don't really want this to ramp up to a spot where we just can't deal with it anymore? What kind of things are you looking at to make sure you catch that before it really gets out of control?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing is our quarantine as they're coming in. We're making sure that if there's anybody if we have any hint of the COVID, they go into isolation. If we're just not sure when they come in, they at least go into quarantine for a few days just to make sure that there's nothing. Our concern is, and we have contingency plans in place if we really had a major outbreak. Sure. I can't really discuss it because of the safety things and logistics involved there, but we do have contingency plans in place. And right now, like I say, they're doing very good. I'm not aware of any positive inmates down there, any COVID positive inmates in the facility right now. So knock on wood, we're just trying to keep that to a minimum.
Where are you getting your tests from? Are they coming from Riverstone Health, or how do you do a test if somebody comes in, they've got a fever, you got them in quarantine, and they keep showing symptoms? When do you give them a test, and where do you get that test from?
Well, that decision is made by our medical facility down there. We have actual on-site 24/7, 365 medical people in the jail. We're very fortunate because not all the jails in Montana have that. They're able to, I wouldn't call it diagnose, but at least be able to determine if somebody is ill enough that they would need to be transported to the hospital, and we would do that. Our own people do that. But if there's somebody that is just maybe has symptoms, they're not feeling well, or that type of stuff, they can treat them there, and we can put them in isolation or in quarantine and keep them away from the other inmates. Sometimes it might be a little bit too late. We've had a couple of issues down there where we had a little bit of an outbreak, but they've done a great job. Again, haven't had anybody with real major issues, maybe one or two that went to the hospital, but nobody that's passed as a result of COVID. So.
Sure. And we've touched on this a little bit earlier too. Some of the diversion techniques that you guys have been using to keep that booking number down. Have you added anything to that under COVID-19, or you're still using the same programs you've always used?
Well, we're still using the same programs, the ones that have been in place, but we are a little bit picky about the inmates that we take in. You know, there might be somebody out there with 15 warrants for an open container, but are they really a threat to the community?
Sure.
We need to keep those beds open for those that are out, you know, burglarizing or stealing cars, or, you know, causing hate and discontent and actually being a threat to our community. And that's how we determine it. You know, is that person a threat to our community? And we don't necessarily look at it as, you know, he's a threat because he might go out and drink and drive. You know, that there's a lot of people that could happen with, but on the other hand, they're probably not as much of a threat as those that might be out robbing or assaulting somebody, or those types of things. Those are the people. Misdemeanor offense of domestic violence, you know, that's another one. That's an absolute trip to jail. You know, it's and we do take those. We have to take those, and we do until a judge sees them and releases them.
Sure. As much as you can, let us in on this. What have kind of been the discussions between you and the police chief on, you know, the city's picking this guy up, but are we still working on this person has to go to jail, maybe this one doesn't? What kind of discussions have you had with the police chief along those lines?
That's the exact discussion that we've had, you know, letting them make the decision out in the field, make sure that they contact the shift commander down at the jail, have a conversation about it. Does this person need to go? Not always are we going to say that they do, but they do have a very candid conversation about this is what's happened, this is the person that really does need to go into the jail, and we'll make room for them. You know, we might have to stack them deep, but we do our best to make sure that we get those that might be a public safety threat to get them into the jail.
Sure. Have you had a chance to talk with any of the other larger counties and maybe what they're doing as far as COVID procedures and what you're doing, and maybe you can provide them with good information or they can provide you with good information? Have you guys had that discussion amongst the guys, I guess the larger county sheriffs?
We have. In fact, we have conversations once a week. We talk about, through our association, we talk to the different sheriffs around, whether it be Cascade County, Lewis and Clark County, Missoula County, Gallatin County. And for the most part, I think we're all doing pretty much the same things, trying to keep this to a dull roar as far as the pandemic. But you know, I'm not aware of anything that we're suggesting for one or the other, because I think we've been dealing with it long enough that everybody is pretty much on the same page as far as what they're doing. Those that might be taking people in that maybe we don't because they have the room, or vice versa. I know some of the other jails are pretty full too, so they're having the same problem. But a lot of it they have to deal with the population in their jails and make that decision. Does this person need to be in jail?
Is there anything about the detention facility that you learned since the pandemic started that you didn't know before?
You know, I think probably keeping a good eye on cleanliness down there and stuff. You know, it's tough. You got 500 people in squashed into a place like that, and you have to make sure that you provide all the sanitation that you can, especially with COVID. But even after it's gone and this has run its course, we need to make sure that we keep doing that, because I think it has really cut down on other health concerns as well.
Sure.
You know, whether it be colds and flus and those types of things. You know, people are still going to bring things in and bring viruses in and that type of stuff. But I think everybody has found how important it is and how much it can help to keep people safe in there by just following these same procedures because we can.
Yeah.
You know, there's just simply no reason not to.
Sure, absolutely. I wanted to touch a little bit on the mental health services down at the detention facility. What kind of mental health services do you provide? And is that, I know you talked about having 24/7 medical staff on site. Do you also have that on the mental health side of things?
It's not 24/7, but we do have it a few days a week. We have companies that we contract with that come in and provide counseling services. And then we use what we call telepsych, which is a psychiatrist that they can visit with over the television. And they have several hours of that every week as well. So, it's tough when you look at the population of the jail. There's several of them that have like co-occurring. It might be a drug addiction, it could be mental health issues and those types of things. So we try to provide those, especially those with the most serious needs, with the services first, and then try to get everybody else that makes a request, whether it be to talk to a psychiatrist or talk to a counselor, to get them that service as well. So we do the best we can. Jails have become the kind of the de facto mental health centers because there's some places that you just can't take some people that might be a danger to themselves or the community. So we have to do our best to regulate that as well. Jails are not where people with mental health issues need to be, but sometimes it's the call of last resort.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
And for their own safety as well.
Sure. And then are there some resources if they can kind of get maybe some stuff under control? Are there some resources that you can kind of move them along out of the jail and still let them find mental health resources?
Well, we do, and in the past we've had different programs that we're able to kind of help them with case management and stuff. We don't really have that right now, but they do have Riverstone Health that they can work with, and the Community Crisis Center, some of the other mental health agencies in the community that we work with them as much as we possibly can, especially when they know that somebody might be getting released that's going to need some services.
Sure. All right. Let's talk a little bit about broader picture, bigger picture. What do you see as kind of maybe some of the upcoming or things that we're going to hear about on the law enforcement side of things in Yellowstone County over the next 3 to 5 years? What are some of the big issues that are out there that you're maybe even just starting to have those conversations with the commissioners about in whatever aspect of what you guys are doing?
I don't think so much with the commissioners as it is in training of our own people. You've seen what's happened around the community or the country, with talking about de-escalation or dealing with people with mental health issues. A lot of that is stuff that's being done and trained at the academy when, especially for the new people that are just coming on board. That's something that we really need to work hard on, making sure that people get that training, even those that may have had it in the past, but to continue that type of training so that they can work with people that might be, a threat to themselves and be able to de-escalate a call, especially suicides or suicide threats, those types of calls and stuff. So I think it's going to be more of the ability to work with people on a non-hands-on type thing. We were seeing a lot of that. I think we've been very fortunate here in Montana. We've done a great job of keeping people trained. We'll continue to do that, and I know a lot of the other agencies are too. But looking forward, I'm not really sure. We've concentrated so much on the problems at hand here that really haven't had a whole lot of time to look at the future so much. But,
yeah. Well, and hopefully, we're starting on the downhill slide. That's all.
We can hope. Yes.
Yeah, that where we're at. So, well, Sheriff Linder, thank you so much for taking the time to come in today and visit with us. Thank you so much for you and all of your staff, all that you do to keep us safe here in Yellowstone County. We appreciate it, and so thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay.